He broke the law. He has to pay for it. Now, would they ever do that to a white guy? I never saw a white guy in front of me that didn't have a light on his bike. I never saw that kind of violation. I rarely saw a white guy get pulled over for nothing.
The cops are at the door, and then I answer it, and it said, oh, like we got a complaint about someone potentially breaking and entering. I said, no, we live here. Then they're like, oh, like, can I see some sort of identification, like that this is my address? And I said, for what? So anyways, we were going back and forth because I did not feel that I needed to present that information.
You do not have to present that information if it's your home. You do not have to present it. Honestly, you don't even have to answer the door. You do not have to let them in if they do not have a search warrant. Know your rights.
Who's got a discrimination story you want to share that happened to you?
All right, so I was 16, driving in Atlanta, and a white gentleman in a pickup truck ran me off the road. I had 4 of my friends in the car with me. The off-duty police officer in his private vehicle decided to follow my vehicle instead of the vehicle that ran me off the road, and I was pulled over by 4 police cars, and they got out with their guns drawn and were beating on the windows of the vehicle.
Were you in a city, or where were you?
I was in Riverdale, Georgia, so that's kind of like suburbs.
Okay.
So not in a major city.
Yeah.
And
lots of discrimination in suburbs.
no, hang on.
Yeah, I had to go to court. I had to get a lawyer. Paid a few $1,000s in fees for me being ran off the road by a white guy.
Yeah, but come on, bro. The cops must have thought you provoked the guys.
Well,
in
you
the
had
pickup
four
trucks.
black kids in a car.
Yeah, you didn't belong there, did you?
I was in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I was down the street from my
You
neighborhood.
don't belong
but,
in your neighborhood,
yeah.
do you?
Well, I mean, that's Georgia in the South, so hey.
Yeah.
That's how it
So,
is.
but hang on, AJ. Though you're the judge, what more do you need from that? What did the cop? What more do you need from that? Because you can't take George's word for it here.
Here's the sad part of this whole thing. As a judge, what I have to listen for, if somebody comes before me and says I've been discriminated against, tell me about it. But unless you can say, I know I've been discriminated against because that guy called me the N-word, or because that guy said, you know, we don't want any blacks in this neighborhood.
I threatened him, so I ran him off the road.
Right. Unless you get actual expressions of discrimination, nothing I can do about it.
So the police in this case?
Police in this case can walk in.
I was reading a book or listening to a book called Mathematical Reasoning. And one idea that this book poses is that correlation isn't necessarily causation. Meaning that because an idea or a topic correlates to something else doesn't mean it caused something else. A good example of this would be every morning that I drink coffee, I find $10 on the ground. That doesn't mean that just because I drink coffee, I'm going to find $10 on the ground. The reason I'm bringing this up is because when you hear stories such as this young man getting ran off the road by a white man in a white neighborhood, it was a white police officer, they found him, and because you're black is the reason this happened, it's really hard to argue that. And unless you know all the details to a case, it will be hard to even defend what he's saying. And I'm not trying to refute what he's saying because it may be true. I don't know. You never know if you're listening to these stories. You never know what they're saying is true or false. You have to go by their word if you trust their character. So because I don't know him and he's in a classroom, why would you lie about this? I'm going to go by what you're saying. This all happened, but I will say this. We don't know the reason that this is happening. And it could be because of racism. It could not be. I don't know. One thing I also want to discuss is how the judge is saying it's because you don't belong in the neighborhood, or implying that you don't belong in the neighborhood or the area. That can be very dangerous when you're telling this to young college students who, when they hear this, they're going by your word. You're a judge. You have tenure. They're going to go by what you're saying. And when you're saying, yeah, you don't belong in that neighborhood. You don't belong there. That's why this has happened. And you didn't say that's why this happened, but you're kind of implying it. It can get a little dangerous when you're talking to a group of young minorities. But anyways, let's get back to this. I'm not going to pause it too much. Let's go.
Into a courtroom, he alleges some kind of discrimination. They say, were you there? Yes. Did you do these things that the police say you did? And he may say no, and said, fine, we'll take it to trial, but we're not going to rule on discrimination because unless you can tell me these cops said something racial, something that says they are racist, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the court system unless you catch them saying something racial or racist. And
so
if you don't, it just isn't there.
Yeah, but on the side being a black man, it's my word against his when we go to court. So, I mean, I'm not going to go here and say all the things they said when they were saying get out the effing car and all this other stuff, but a lot of words were exchanged from them. And when we got to court, basically it was like, hey, well, the officer said it didn't happen. They didn't do the body cams and stuff at the time, so apparently it didn't happen.
And a lot of what they said probably wasn't in their report.
No, none of it was in their report.
Wasn't in their report,
yeah.
right. And that's what they'll present to the court is it's not in my report, I didn't say it. I didn't do it.
Uh-huh.
And what you said is in the report and then some probably.
Okay, and so what the implicit bias data would say would be the cops may or may not be, quote, racist. They might be acting on conscious ideas, and they might be thinking that they're actually being fair across the board. They might actually be really fair. They might be fair in 90% of their interactions with people, but in your particular case, it sounds like it wasn't. Although we don't have the other side of the story, right? We only have your side. You know, we trust you because we like you, but...
And that's one thing I was saying. Dr. Richards is also saying we don't really know what happened, and I'm not trying to side with the police officers or be against this young man at all. I'm just saying that if you're gonna put this stuff on social media, which we're on right now, you can't just put out these stories unless you know for a fact. Yeah, like this happened to me. I can prove it. This is what happened. This is what it was. Point blank period. Because maybe the cops wasn't being racist. You don't know. I mean, I'm sure he knows. The young man knows. Or I'm sure the police officers know. Or maybe the judge in the situation knows. But we don't know. But there are people in this classroom who are like, yeah, they already have their thought made up. Yeah, police officers are racist. Yeah. Or they're like, man, he lying. He black. He just a black liar. I don't know, man. I don't know what racists think, but all I'm saying is when it comes to these stories, I think it's best if we know every single side of the story before we automatically go calling it one thing. Hey y'all, make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe.
But, you know.
Let me ask you, in Riverdale, Georgia, it was Riverdale?
Yes.
In Riverdale, Georgia, is the majority population white or black?
At that time, it was majority white.
Okay, and so if you took the thing to trial,
Yes.
you would end up with a predominantly white jury.
Yes.
Okay, and who do you think they're going to believe?
The white officer.
Yes, absolutely.
No, that's not absolute. That's not absolute, bro. That's not absolute. And this is what I mean by this stuff is dangerous, man. This stuff is dangerous. Just because you have a majority white hearing at your trial does not mean they're automatically going to side with the white police officer. That's not true. That's not accurate. Because if you say that, you could inversely say a majority black hearing will side with the black whatever in this situation. And that is racist. That is racist, bro. Just because I'm black does not automatically mean I'm going to side with other black people regardless of the circumstances. That is racism. And I know it's not like direct racism where you're insulting someone, but it has undertones of racism, bro. It does not mean that. And I'm not trying to attack this judge at all. I'm not trying to attack his knowledge, his expertise on the legal system. I'm just letting you know from a young black man's perspective, when you say stuff like that, it is racist.
Sometimes when I go to Sephora, I get like followed around.
Uh-huh.
And it's just kind of annoying.
So you get followed around, and you don't notice following. Do you notice them following white people around?
No.
Do you look for it?
I don't really look for it. I just like, at first I'm just like, well, maybe I'm overthinking it. But then I take them on a tour. Like we go to the perfume section and then they're still following me.
Yeah. You have to go like to, no, this is the kind of thing, right? So this in itself isn't a problem. Like you're not being arrested if you're not shoplifting, it's like, okay, what's the big, but it's annoying though.
I like moved out the hood into like this little white suburban area type, basically like school type. And then, like, one day, like, in the spring, I get real bad allergies. So I went to school, my eyes was, like, bloodshot. And, like, I already went to the doctors or whatever. And they gave me, like, eye drops and everything, but my eyes are still red. And then as soon as I came to school, I was on my way to class. And the principal just kind of, like, pulled me over. Was like, we about to see if you intoxicated or anything. And then I see, like, people, like, I'm not going to say, but my white friends come to school high every day, intoxicated off of pills and stuff. Like, that's what type of school it was. And then, like, they pulled me over and made me test. And then, like, I had nothing on me and stuff like that. Like, they like, checked all my bags and stuff to see, like, if I was selling or, like, was on any type of weed or anything. So then, like, when I told them, like, where my eye drops was, it was in the office. And they still suspended me because, like, I didn't give my eye drops to the nurse, like, because...
Well, you still got suspended?
Yes, I still got suspended.
You violated a rule.
I had...
And here's what I'll say about this situation. I can definitely see something like this happening. And here's why I say this. When you are a minority at a school, whether you're a white minority or a black minority, and you're growing up at school that has a whole lot of another race, you're going to stand out. That's just what it is. I don't care what anyone says. It is a fact. You're going to stand out. So this looks like a pretty strong young black man. He's probably in a very predominantly white school. So when he was there and they seen like this young guy, young black guy, he sticks out like a sore thumb probably in this school. And his eyes are bloodshot red. They don't know what's happening. And they're not... And it's easier to see because he stands out a little more. That's just what it is. You can't ignore it. So I can definitely see him in this situation being called out because he just stands out more. Whereas if you look at a young or a Caucasian person and they're high, as you call it, or intoxicated every day, they just may not even notice them because they just probably blend in easier because it's just what it is. Like, it's just what it is, man. I'm not going to say the people who did this to you are racist because I don't know them. But I will say this. It's just life. You just stand out more in this situation. So I see how they would notice you before they would notice anyone else. It's the same if you look at someone's height. If someone's super tall, they'll stand out more. If someone has a very unique quality, they'll stand out more. It's the same situation. So I can see him getting called out over other people.
They caught him.
They said I violated a rule. Like, they looked for every reason just to suspend me.
Damn, dog.
You know,
What do you do as a judge in these cases like that when you know they're unfair? When you know people have been treated unfairly?
First, I think it was the first year I was a judge in the common pleas court. I had a young man who was pulled over in the city of Dayton. That's where I was a judge. In the city of Dayton because he did not have a bell or a horn on his bicycle. He was pulled over because he did not have a warning device on his bicycle.
A bell or a horn?
A bell or a whistle or something,
Wait,
yes.
So is that a rule?
That is a law in the city of Dayton that you have to have some kind of warning thing on your bicycle. He also didn't have a light. Okay, you have to have a light on your bicycle. It was broad daylight. But he didn't have a light on his bicycle either, so they pull him over.
So this is one of those laws that the police can use to just hassle people, right?
Right. And so they pull him over. He's on his bike. They get him, and they that gives him grounds because he's done something illegal. That means they can pat him down. They find a small amount, very, very small amount of crack on him, and
crack. Wait, what? Whoa! This story just took a different turn. Oh my God! What do you mean a small amount of crack? It's literally crack. And when I hear this type of stories, I'm like, maybe they did a good job pulling him over because he had crack on him. Crack? That's not okay. Oh, brother. Nah, it's no way. It's no way about to justify this, man. It's no way.
So they arrest him. Now, this is a young man who's 18, 19 years old. No record up to that point. Now he comes before me. They tell me the story that he got pulled over, and he's going to plead guilty to the charge of possessing drugs. And I was upset about that. And afterwards, I took his lawyer aside afterwards and said, why on earth didn't you bring a motion to suppress that evidence with that situation. And he said, because Judge, it wouldn't matter. You would have had to have ruled in his favor because he was doing something illegal. You would have had to rule that that was a legitimate stop. And I said, what if I hadn't? The prosecutor would have appealed it, and it would have been back in front of you.
What? What? Okay. I don't even know what to say, because he literally had crack on him and he was on his bicycle, and I get it. Like, who pulls somebody over on a bicycle? That's kind of unheard of. But I would argue, having crack on your bicycle is also a little unheard of. So maybe in this specific situation, the officer saw something in him that said, you know what? I need to pull him over because there's something off. And something was indeed off. I'm not going to say it, but this is not a normal situation. But let's end this video
in a few months. I mean, it's not going to make any difference. He broke the law. He has to pay for it. Now, would they ever do that to a white guy? I never saw a white guy in front of me that didn't have a light on his bike. I never saw that kind of violation. I rarely saw a white guy get pulled over for not using the turn signal. I rarely saw a white guy get pulled over who was making some kind of furtive movement in his car. That just didn't happen to white people.
So this was before, when my family first moved to a different neighborhood, and we hadn't met everyone yet. So I was driving. I was coming back from school. This was in high school, and I went and I pulled in my driveway and went throughout the day, yada, yada, yada. My brothers and sisters came home, and mind you, we're the only family of color in this neighborhood. And we ended up getting the cops. So then anyways, I left and I came back that night, and I went and I pulled in the driveway, light came on. And next thing you know, the cops are at the door, and then I answer it and it said, we got a complaint about someone potentially breaking and entering. I said, no, we live here. Then they're like, can I see some sort of identification, that this is my address? And I said, for what? So anyways, we were going back and forth because I did not feel that I needed to present that information. So Judge, how do you feel about that?
I think you have every right not to present your information. But
does she have to present the information if they ask for it?
You do not have to present that information if it's your home. You do not have to present it. Honestly, you don't even have to answer the door, and you do not have to let them in if they do not have a search warrant. Know your rights.
She does. If she's jaywalked or something, which is illegal, you kind of have to tell them what your name is.
I'm in my home.
You don't have to present that information, but it probably avoids escalating the situation if you do. But do you know?
Two things with that, though. Why, in the first place, were the cops called for breaking and entering? We're the only family of color.
Yeah.
You see?
That you just answered the question.
No, that does not answer the question. Correlation is not causation. Correlation is not causation. Correlation is not causation. Wait, actually, let me not speak too soon, because maybe Dr. Sam Richards is getting somewhere else. But being a family of color does not mean, mathematically speaking, that they were called because you are black. Correlation is not causation. Flag on the play.
No, I know. I know
you're the only family of color.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
This is the incumbent, white people. The most recent gentleman that just got. Hang on, we're gonna come back to you in a second because you had two things. But when we hear about people being the most recent gentleman, was it in Minnesota it was out in California who got shot by the police? They said it was some other person that called. It's no, he's got a gun, and this is come on, man. Would you have said he's got a cell phone? And would you have said, if it was a white guy that was holding a cell phone, would you have seen it as a gun? And this is the thing. This is implicit bias. This is that stuff. So, breaking and entering. If you were a white you might have been a white family who was outside trying to get your windows unstuck at 10 o'clock at night, and people wouldn't have called. You know what I mean? But you're just kind of pulling into your driveway, so they called. This is.
I don't know. Okay, here's what I will say about this. Dr. Sam Richards is an extremely intelligent professor. I'm not a sociology I don't even know what major. I think sociology, that's not my major. I'm engineering major. So when I hear these stories, I try to look at them from a more analytical perspective. That's why I keep saying correlation is not. I said that about 20 times. Y'all already know. But I would say this: just because a thing is doesn't mean it caused. Just because you are black does not mean that they were called because you are black. It could mean they were called because you are black. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying drawing that conclusion is dangerous, and it's not necessarily true unless you know all the details. That's like a key component of analytical reasoning. But it could be. I'm not going to say it's not, but I'm also going to say it's you can't definitively say it is. But anyways, let me know what y'all felt about this video.